Welcome back to another episode of the Miami Heat Roundtable. My name is Amir. I'm joined today by Martel. You can find Martel at the Miami Heat Zone podcast. And we also have another guest joining the show today. We got Kyle. Hey, Kyle, how's it going, man?
Good, really good.
Let the
Thank you
people
so
know
much.
where they can find you, Kyle.
Intangible IQ Hoops, on YouTube, on TikTok, on Instagram. You can find me there, and I'm just trying to touch on the intangibles of the game and kind of get away from your mundane basketball conversations. So, yeah.
Well, this conversation might be kind of mundane because we all know it's the free agency day for the NBA, and the Miami Heat have no cap space really. So there are players like Paul George and LeBron, technically, even though we already know he's going to re-sign with the Lakers. But DeMar DeRozan, Klay Thompson, there's all these players out there that the Miami Heat are not going to be able to afford. So I did want to talk to you about free agency because we are like 5 hours away from when free agency can technically begin. And again, the Miami Heat were a first apron team, but Thomas Bryant and Kevin Love and Caleb all opted out. But we still don't have a lot of salary to wiggle with, essentially. So I wanted to ask you, Kyle, are there any guys on your radar that we can possibly expect the Miami Heat could sign today to fill the rest of the holes in our roster? I know we signed Khalil Ware and we got some backup wings like in the second round. But is there anybody else that you think like at the point guard position, at the wing position, that could be available that can help this Miami Heat team?
So I would say from the wing position, and I would actually prefer if the Heat did go large wing versus traditional big. It gives them some versatility on both offense and defense. Um, I'm glad that they addressed the Khalil Ware, putting somebody next to Bam that's above 6'5", who can play both ways. I think if they're going to trend in that direction, they need to continue to trend in that direction. Fontecchio's 6'7" from, I think he's on Detroit. And they declined him recently. Desmond Jr. is a bit shorter, but I think as far as defense is concerned, he could be a good option as well. I know this is a stretch. I mentioned him before. I don't know how they would get this done, but DeMar DeRozan would be an interesting piece as he may opt out. I don't know how much he's willing to command. I'm not sure how much he's asking for. They seem far and away from getting on to connecting on what he wants to be paid and how many years he wants to be paid. The conversation kind of gone cold as far as his contract is concerned. So this is another guy who can score, and he's a big body at his position, so he could be pretty interesting as well. What are y'all's thoughts?
Yeah, so for sure for me, it's going to be Dennis Smith Jr. People forget how young he is. 25 years old. 6'3", good defensive point guard. And I know that his stats really didn't jump off the screen last year for the Brooklyn Nets. But I always say this: the Miami Heat, we need high-level role players. We need proven NBA guys. And of course, it's kind of like what Amir said. We can't afford some of these, primetime free agents like Klay Thompson, Paul George. It's not going to happen. So since we know that, we need to actually be realistic on who we want. And if we're going to get somebody, let them be young. Why not? Guys who are proven in the NBA. Same thing like with Lonnie Walker. People forget he's 26 years old. How are you not going to take a chance on a 6'4" athletic guy who can play on the perimeter? He's great on the fast break, and he's had great moments. And think about this, and this is what I want people to understand. If Eric Spoelstra was able to do this with Caleb Martin, Max Strus, and Gabe Vincent, can you imagine what he can do with proven NBA players? Guys who are actually going to play every night, guys who are actually hungry, guys who actually want to get another NBA contract. That is exactly why I think two of the best guys that we can get is Lonnie Walker and Dennis Smith Jr., not only for their age, but just for their overall talent level and the base of their skills.
Yeah, for me, those guys probably would get the veterans min, and that fluctuates based on years of service. If it's I think you have to be in the NBA for 7 years to qualify for a certain threshold. If you've been in the NBA for 10 years, you get a little bit more money. So it's like 2 point something million if you've been in the NBA for 7 years. And then if you're in the NBA for 10, you get like 3.1. So you get a little pay bump. So I think the guys you mentioned hopefully can fall within that range. But you never know. That Fontecchio guy was a Miami Heat scrub killer all year long on both teams. Even after he got traded to the Pistons, he still put up I think he scored 20 points on us like in 3 of the 4 times he played us. So he's a free agent. He's making $3 million, so I could see him trying to get like 7 or 8, obviously, just which is not like a complete premium for someone who could shoot the 3 lights out like that. But maybe we can get him for a mid level. Possibly that 5.2 million that we have in Miami is, you know, similar to an 8 million, as I keep saying, in other states, right? Because there's no income tax. So if he gets 8 million somewhere else, that can equal to 5 in Miami. But there's a couple other guys I want to ask you. Martel and I have made tons of videos, obviously, together, and we've mentioned this in the past. But Kyle, what are your thoughts on an Obi Toppin possibly at the mid level if he's willing to accept that? Because he made around like 4 or 5 million. So if he's willing to take that same amount, what are your thoughts on him? Because he's someone, again, who can give us some functional size, you know, as a wing player, power forward. He's 6'9", averaged 10 points, 4 rebounds, shot 40% from 3. We have no athletes really on this team except for Bam, who isn't like the greatest athlete. He's one of the most athletic on our team, but it's basically Bam and now Kalel Ware, who has 0 experience. Like Caleb was like our second most athletic guy, most acrobatic guy, and he's gone now at this point. So Obi Toppin could be that high flyer lob threat that we could use. So what are your thoughts on Obi?
I think Obi's a good pick. I think also Jalen Smith is a quietly kept. I don't know how much he's going to ask for, but they declined him as well. I think big bodies, guys who can defend and maybe stretch the floor a little bit, really kind of renovates. You know, I think that's the word that Pat used in the press conference about Spo kind of switching up what the offense and defense looks like. If he's going to do that, you got to have guys who can play both ways, obviously, and also going to give you some functional size. I think Obi would be great, not just from an athletic standpoint, but he seems to play the game relatively well. He seems to be in the right spots when he needs to be. He can shoot the jumper. I think that only is going to improve. And then I mentioned Jalen Smith, who he didn't get drafted by us, but I thought that's who they were going to draft in his draft class. And I guess we passed on him. But it's intriguing for him to be, you know, to shake loose. I don't know exactly what the Pacers' plans are, but he shook loose, and it would be interesting to see if they took, you know, an opportunity out on, you know, trying to get a guy who's got a decent amount of size, who can shoot. He's a high IQ player, plays with a lot of effort and energy. And ironically enough, I did some stat reading. The Heat were top 10 in rebounds, which is crazy considering how small we were. That can get better if they add the guys we're talking about. Just add some size.
That's it, because people forget that Obi Toppin, when he was with the New York Knicks, he wasn't shooting all those threes. Tom Thibodeau did not have him playing the way, and I'm surprised that the Pacers have not brought him back, because the way that Obi Toppin has been able to shoot the 3 compared to how he was on the New York Knicks is absolutely phenomenal. Now, what do you guys think about the former number 2 overall pick in Wiseman? I think that he's definitely someone the Miami Heat have to look at. I think he's like 24, 23 years old. I just think when he went to Golden State, he did not fit their offense. He did not fit what they're doing. He did not fit their scheme. They threw a rookie into a team that's trying to contend for a championship, and it just didn't fit their scheme. So what do you guys think about James Wiseman and possibly taking a look at him, because he's another cheap contract as well?
I mean, if it's for like a veteran's minimum, like I know he was making over 10 million. Yeah, I don't know. Like he played on Detroit. Where else has he been on? Has he been on 3 teams, or is it just
Warriors in Detroit? I think 2 things about that. For one, I don't think, and this is no knock on Steve Kerr, but I don't think he knew how to utilize him in their offense. He's not their traditional big man. Bogut's a different type of big man. The different kind of big men they've had now. Kevon Looney, different guy. Offensively, he wasn't going to get the touches that, you know, you can get as a rookie to get the reps. He's not just a roll and pick and roll and kind of roll guy. He seems to have a lot more offensive upside than he was willing to, you know, was able to use on the Warriors. And then in Detroit, I don't know what that organization is doing. It looks like they're trying to reset some things. They had Bagley for a little bit. I'm assuming he got traded to the Wizards this past season. But they had 2 guys they were trying to fight, you know, for you know, playing time. I think he has a lot of good skill. I think in the right, organization, in the right like fit, he can round those skills off and really polish himself as a player. I think he's a sleeper as far as a free agent. He's got a lot of size, so that's another thing. We're going to need a backup big. I would not be opposed to him getting a chance and just saying, hey, well, let's see what we can work out. I think the Heat have made do with, less skilled players. And I think adding him to this roster would be, at least intriguing to try. If it doesn't work, you trade him. But not taking a flyer out on him would probably be a missed opportunity on adding more size to this team. It's not just, size to have size, but size that can be used both offensively and defensively. So, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the Heat, I don't know any young, like, project centers that we've, like, worked on in the past. Like, we've got Dedmon past, he never even had a prime, but, like, we had Dwayne Dedmon, we had Cody Zeller most recently. I mean, Thomas Bryant was that, I guess, 26-year-old kind of young, option. Just didn't fit with our defensive scheme. So I think Wiseman's a better defender. Almost averaged a block per game, but, like, I think he's a better defender than Thomas Bryant is, so we can use him on the defensive end. But, like, also thinking way back earlier days, like, we took a flyer on Greg Oden, like, after his injury history, and he was a little bit older, and Eddie Curry. So, like, we've never really had someone as youthful as a James Wiseman in our system at that age. He's 22, actually, Martel. I just looked it up. And
Bro, come on. You have
he
to.
averaged with the Pistons when he got traded first from the Warriors to the Pistons. He played 25 games. He actually started, like, most of those games, and he was averaging 13 and 8. So, like, he's a big body. Like, he serves a purpose helping us with defensive rebounding, offensive rebounding. He was averaging a few offensive rebounds per game. The Heat averaged only 9 offensive rebounds as a team last year. We were one of the worst offensive rebounding teams in the NBA. No second chance opportunities. He was averaging 3 alone, and that's a third of what the Heat averaged last season. So I'm okay with that option as long as it's for the veteran minimum. And I didn't realize he's only 22 years old. So he could do wonders perhaps in our system, in our organization, as a backup big before Kalel Ware, kind of leapfrogs him, I'm assuming, in the rotation, because we know Kalel is going to most likely start off in the G League for at least, the first few months of the season. So having someone who has some veteran experience, if you will, could be good to have. Let me ask you guys this real quick too. So the Atlanta Hawks are a mess. Obviously, they just traded DeJounte Murray for, like, peanuts, essentially. I mean, the two picks are valuable. Like the Heat, basically, we only have 2 first-round picks available, right? In the future, the 2028, the 2030 pick. But they basically got was Dyson Daniels and Larry Nance. Like, so I think if we offered a package of Tyler and those 2 first-round picks and throw in a Thomas Bryant or whatever filler, that would have been a better package. But it seems like I don't want to talk about that because I'm sad. It seems like all these teams are making moves again, and we're just, sitting still, basically. But it seems like the Atlanta Hawks are possibly going to go on a fire sale themselves. And obviously, Trae Young would be the first piece we can, hope for and wish for and trade for. But realistically, though, Martel, what do you think about Sadiq Bey? I know you mentioned him, and he's 25 years old. He made $3 million last year. Like, are they going to re-sign him, or are they going to go in full tank mode? And can he get it? He averaged 14 points a game. So, like, what are your thoughts on him? Like,
he's coming off the ACL injury. And they're also, listen, to be honest, like, I know they said they're going on a fire sale. I don't think so. I think they're going to keep Trae Young. I think they have a good core of young guys there. And they also because when you notice, they put a lot of wing defenders. They got a lot of wing defenders to help Trae out. So that now, even though Trae's a defensive liability, it's not going to be so glaring because you have a bunch of switchable, movable wing defenders all around him. So I really don't think they're going to be trading as much as we think. But especially a guy in Sadiq Bey he's like Caleb Martin. He can pretty much do a little bit of everything. He's like 6'6". I wouldn't mind taking listen, we're not in the position to say we don't want anyone. Especially when we have guys like Cole Swider, Jamal Cain, and all these other undrafted guys. I do like Keyshawn Johnson, the one that we got. He's a jump out of the gym type player. But other than that, we don't have no room to say that we don't want anyone. It's just about picking the right ones. You know what I mean? So what I mean by that is same thing like with Andre Drummond. Like Amir always brings us up all the time. He's only 30 years old. The fact that Andre Drummond's only 30 years old and he trains in Miami, he lives in Miami, he's a perfect guy that he's a veteran big man that can definitely play behind Bam.
What are your thoughts on? Let me switch gears real quick too, because I don't want to talk about free agents anymore. It's pretty depressing that we're talking about Sadiq Bey. No offense to him, obviously, and these types of players, Dennis Smith Jr. But the trade market. So the Miami Heat again are going to have to improve their roster through trades. We have salaries that we can match and dump a Terry, a Tyler, a Duncan, whoever it may be. But what are your thoughts on Zach LaVine and like him having no market? The Bulls are now apparently willing to attach a first round pick, so that can give us 3 first round picks. So that can give us some ammo for next season or 2 seasons from now when like a De'Aaron Fox becomes available, and then use LaVine's. I'm thinking too far ahead, obviously. Use LaVine's contract, which will be expiring in a few years, to get like a De'Aaron Fox or someone else. But what are your thoughts just on LaVine and the Heat taking a flyer on him? You would have to trade a lot. Tyler makes 30. He's making 45 next year. So like it would in theory have to be like Tyler and Duncan for him and a
But
first round pick.
remember though, before you answer Kyle, he's 29 years old, almost 30. Bad contract and bad injury history. But go ahead.
So with those things in mind, I know the contract's kind of heavy, but also he gives you a lot more athleticism at the position he's playing than what we currently have. A lot more pressure on the rim than Tyler, who that's where, he would be slotted into. His injury history is a little spotty, but overall, it appears that if he has the opportunity, he can score the ball in bunches in a lot of different ways. That just from this postseason alone, we kind of saw we need another guy who can do that, put pressure on the rim. He's still an athlete at the end of the day, as far as being able to jump and get to the basket, play with a bit of force. If there's no market for him, we should be looking at him. I know that sounds pretty crazy, but that should be the case, because if there's nobody else vying and they're trying to attach a pick to him, they're simply trying to get rid of him and his contract. I think the Heat have had a good track record with adding guys that other teams didn't necessarily want to keep and kind of being successful at kind of like them buying into kind of what Spo wants to do and them really maximizing their best, their strengths. And I think that's another thing about Spo as well, is him being able to protect his players from their weaknesses as much as possible. We've seen players leave the Heat and those weaknesses are very glaring later on. So I would say that they should take a shot at him if they're going to improve this roster. He scores a lot more, I guess you could say, maybe more of, I want to say efficiently, because he can be kind of a shot chucker at times, but a lot of those shots he can get on a heater and it kind of sustains throughout a game. So a team that struggled in scoring last season, could not put points on the board for long stretches, couldn't keep leads for extended periods of time because it couldn't put points on the board. I wouldn't be mad if the Heat took an opportunity at looking at him. If all else fails and he has it, he has a great season, that ups his trade market. If it doesn't work and it's not a good fit, but he scored well enough, teams are going to go back to looking at him. So I don't think it would hurt to take a look at LaVine, especially if no one else is competing to grab him.
Yeah, I was arguing with one of our co-hosts that's not on the show today, Trent, about the Zach LaVine piece. I didn't know they were attaching a first round pick, so that kind of changes everything there. But like looking at his contract, he has 3 years, 120 left, and then Tyler has 3 years, 90 left. So of course, if we're going to get rid of someone, I think I'd probably prefer to keep, especially since we know Jimmy's going to be there next year, right? Even though he didn't get that extension, I would say let's get rid of Tyler because of the fit. Obviously, it hasn't been working out with Jimmy and Bam as our big three. So keep Terry. Hope he can be healthy, and then put Zach LaVine next to him, which is more of a true shooting guard, right? Because like Tyler and Terry are both very similar types of players, both undersized, not the best defenders, but combo guards. But if you put Zach LaVine next to a Terry then could be the de facto point guard. But also, you're getting rid of that 90 million. It's only 30 extra million compared to Tyler Hero. And Tyler Hero's best season was, 20 points per game. Let Zach LaVine, before his injuries, was averaging 27 points, 25, 25, 24 per game. So he's a better 3-level scorer, to your point, right? Like, he can create a shot more efficiently, more effectively. He doesn't need the screen, right? Like, Tyler always needs a screen and pick and roll from Bam Adebayo in order to get open. So I don't know. I like thinking about that, like getting off the Tyler contract for that LaVine contract, hoping he could stay healthy. He's going to be more productive than Tyler Hero. So if he does stay healthy, that's only going to help us offensively, which is our biggest issue. And to your point, he might be a tradable asset in 2 years if he's healthy and still like an all-star caliber player. He's only 29. Like, he is older and Tyler is way younger, but like, his contract ends at age 32. It's not like he's going to be 35, 36, 37 like some of these players now, that have these absorbent contracts. So I might be willing to take a flyer on that. But let's switch gears real quick, Kyle, before we do close, and just want to get your opinions on the draft, which happened last week. How do you feel about the Khalil Ware pick? Do you think the Miami Heat made a good decision, or do you think we missed out on Dalton Connect or anybody else that was available?
I actually was surprisingly correct about them looking at him in May, funny enough. And I was like, he fits a need, he fits a want. He looks like he can score the ball from 3 levels. He can post up. Spo loves a guy who can switch. Putting him next to Bam would fit. Lo and behold, I completely, actually, as him being one of my sleepers, I completely forgot he would be on the board. In fact, it seems like other teams also forgot he'd be on the board. Wasn't mad that we passed on Connect, only from the perspective that we needed to put somebody next to Bam, and I couldn't have thought of a better fit next to Bam. I've heard some comparisons. I think high, and this is a very high ceiling, and I don't want to put any pressure. The ceiling for me on Khalil is Bosh. Being able to defend in a sneakily way. He blocks shots a little bit more forcefully than Bosh did. But being able to shoot the ball from distance, mid-range, eventually gets to the line as he skills, adds some more skills over playing time. I thought that was a really good pickup by them. And I think that he's going to be every bit as good as needed. A lot of things about his motor, I think, were a little overstated. If he played for Mike Woodson, there's clearly no way he could be who he is if he played, you know what I'm saying? So I think that on that regard, I think they got a really good steal of the draft, and the Heat do a great job at developing big men, and they have a ton of big men in their organization. If you're not talking Bosh, you're talking Alonzo. They have some guys who can help him really get to that next level. The second round with Larson, I was a little uncomfortable only because I thought Nikola was who we were going to pick. Kind of, he's Jovic's boy, already kind of some chemistry there. They've played together. I thought that's who they were going to pick. But I did some footage. I watched some footage. I could come around to Larson if he can give us what he did in college and a bit more. He seems to play both sides of the ball, so that's already an upside for me. And he shoots the ball relatively well. He plays with a bit of an edge. So I'm not mad at that. I don't think we passed on anybody. I think the guys we might have picked probably got picked before. I was thinking Clintman from a size perspective, Bobby Clinton. He's 6'11", two-way guy. And then other than that, I thought Ulrich got picked by the Raptors. Chomche, I thought that was the other guy they might take a look at. They scooped him up. But I think they got who they wanted. I don't ever distrust the Heat's ability to scout. They do the work. And they've watched guys for years. So I really think that they did a good job at addressing some things. And on the undrafted side, they grabbed some athletes with Kashad Johnson. And I think Zion Pullen can be really, 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 really good in the right circumstances. And then they added Bryson Warren, who I watch a whole lot of basketball. So he was really good for the G League. I think in the right circumstances, and if he can kind of show more of those flashes he did throughout the G League season, he can be another piece they add for an affordable amount. onto this roster as far as guard play and playing both ways. So I think they did a good job. In my opinion, they still have some work to do to round this roster out and really try to compete this upcoming season, though.
Especially after the moves the Knicks have made, and especially after some of the moves that other teams are making around us in the East that are only gonna. Other teams are only gonna improve. The Sixers have so much cap space, and they're linked to Paul George and even DeMar DeRozan. So we'll see. There's gonna be a lot happening, and we need to add. I'm hoping at least a third star to this Miami Heat team. Like I'm hoping we can get that Zach LaVine, that Trae Young, that Brandon Ingram, and if not, hopefully one of the guys we mentioned earlier. I mean, I'll be really sad if the best move we make this offseason is a Lonnie Walker, or a Obi Toppin or a Dennis Smith Jr., which that could be the reality at this point. We'll see, but you never know. Someone might become available also during the season before the trade deadline. You never know who might request a trade. But yeah, the Miami Heat have improved slightly, obviously, through the draft, which is good for the future. But right now, we have Jimmy Butler coming back. We have Bam Adebayo, and this Jimmy Butler build and window is ending relatively soon. So I think we need to make more impactful moves, whether it's through free agency, but most likely it has to come through a trade. So we'll see. We have a lot of offseason left, and today is free agency day, so we'll see how the dominoes fall and how that's going to impact the decisions that the Miami Heat need to make forward. But anyway, Kyle, it was really nice meeting you. Happy that you were able to hop on, and would love to have you come back on when the rest of the crew is here. So shout out to Trent and Ernest. Don't forget to follow Trent's channel, Miami Heat Network, and he also just hit 4,000. So congrats to Trent. Ernest, who's not on the show, Miami Heat Talk, he just hit 4,000 subscribers. So congrats to Ernest. And my boy Martel, obviously here today. Martel just hit 4,000 subscribers on YouTube. So congrats to Martel. And then Kyle, don't forget to shout out your channel. Let the audience know where they can find you.
So I'm Intangible IQ Hoops on YouTube and on everything else. So just look out for me. I'm putting out videos on a whole bunch of different topics containing basketball and just kind of elevating the IQ of the basketball conversation and getting it away from what we see on some of these networks that kind of put out some really mundane conversations about things that could be way better. So Intangible IQ Hoops.
Oh, how the mighty have fallen. I used to love ESPN and Bleacher Report and all those publications, and I don't even watch them anymore. So yeah. I hear you, man. We need more people like you, obviously, so we can have better, more intelligent conversations and not just clickbait stuff. So anyway, Martel, any last words before we hop off?
Make sure you guys like, share, comment, subscribe, and thank you for all the support.